This video is going to demonstrate the base case visitor and vendor registration. And by base case, I mean the scenario where either the resident or the guard on the resident's behalf has already pre-registered a visitor or a vendor for the resident's lot. So I am currently on the visitor check-in tab. I'm going to go through that first. Both check-ins, whether visitor or vendor, are what we call a wizard. It's basically a multi-step process. So in the case of a visitor, it's select the lot, select the visitor, confirm the check-in. So the first step is lot selection. Now I am in the test environment, so I don't have the full list of 135 lots. But if you had the larger list, you can search for the lot or the resident or a combination. So I could type 16 for my lot. If the visitor said, I'm going to visit the Northcutts, you could type NOR and it's going to filter either on the lot number or the last name or the first name. And they could have said, hey, I'm going to visit Rose, and you'd get Rose. And so the minute you start typing, it dynamically filters that list, and you can enter lot number or resident name. Okay. So in our case, I want to go to lot 16. In the test environment, which you'll be using for training initially, the lot 16 has visitors and vendors registered, so I suggest using that if you're going to go through the process on your own. So the first thing you do then is click on it. So I've clicked lot 16, and now it shows me a list of registered vendors, or excuse me, registered visitors. So there are two registered visitors, Chris Adamson and Phil Esposito. The resident name below the visitor name is the resident who registered or entered that visitor. So you can pick either one, but I'm going to pick Phil Esposito. And I'm to the last step now. Notice the lot has been checked, the visitor has been checked, and now we're to confirm. It's lot 16. The only importance of the name listed here is that's the name that will go into the visit log when the check-in is complete. Other than that, it has no special meaning. The visitor's name, and then the last piece of information are settings. There's an open gate checkbox. By default, we've set that up to be checked. So the minute you hit check-in, the visitor gate will automatically open. You don't need to hit a switch on the wall. And then once the visitor passes through, it will close. And so that should help a little bit. You could also enter a visit-specific comment if you wanted to. I suspect that won't be required in most cases, but there is a field for that. The other thing is, if you get to this point and you need to make an update, maybe you said, I picked the wrong lot or I picked the wrong visitor, you can always click on the previous step or one of the previous steps. So I could go back, click on visitor. I could change that to Chris Adamson, and notice the name changed to Rose Northcutt because Chris was registered by Rose. Okay, so I go Chris Adamson, and now I'm going to hit check-in. And so at that point, the visitor has been checked in. I just received a notification on my phone that Chris was checked in. It said Chris Adamson has been checked into your lot. And so that occurs automatically, the notification. We're encouraging all of the residents as they go through the setup process to set up a notification, either text, email, or a push notification for the app. And there are notifications for visitor check-in, vendor check-in, and ultimately package delivery, although we don't have the package functionality enabled in the first rollout. So that is the basic vendor check-in or visitor check-in. Now I'm going to go to vendor check-in. Now the vendor process and the whole vendor approach is different than what you've done historically for both you, the guards, as well as the residents. The vendor has 4 steps, this check-in process, and the order of the steps is select the vendor, select the employee, select the lot, and then confirm the check-in, okay? And there are a variety of reasons we've done this. I'm not going to go into those, but when you get to the production environment, the list of vendors is, I think, 1,484 vendors. So you're not going to be able to scroll down through the list. And the list is, I think, limited to 10 anyway. You're going to have to search or filter on the vendor name, the employee name, or a combination of the two. And if that doesn't work, and it will 99.999% of the time, you can also filter by vendor type. So you could say, hey, I want to see all the babysitting vendors, and then the list shrinks in the case of babysitting. Or you could say cleaning. Now that's still a very long list in the production environment, but in the test environment, there's only 3. Typically, you won't use this filter, but I just wanted to show that. So let's say I was going to check in arrow exterminating. So in the case of arrow exterminating, the most distinctive word is arrow, and you should always start with the most distinctive word to try to get to the answer as quickly as possible. So I'm going to type ARR, and immediately I'm to arrow exterminating. Now I could have also, since I know my employee from Arrow is Eric Ramos, I could have typed ERIC RA, and now here I am, Eric Ramos. So it's searching for, at the same time, either the vendor name or the vendor employee. So I'm going to pick Arrow Exterminating. The next step is selecting the employee. Every vendor will have staff as the first option. And then also in many cases, there will be one or more existing employees listed if we knew that information from the prior system, or if residents have entered employees as they've registered their vendors in the new system. So in this case, for this first pass, I'm just going to pick Eric Ramos. And so now we're at a lot. Well, in our community, in the case of Arrow, there are many lots that are serviced by Arrow. So at this point, you would ask Eric or whoever it was, which lots are you going to today? And they may say, well, I'm going to 6, 15, 16, and 17. And those will be selected over here. So when we go to check-in, all 4 will be checked in simultaneously. The other thing I'll point out is this icon here. We haven't seen that yet. That allows for residents to put comments in their vendor registration. So if I click on that icon, I added a comment, provide service every month on the last Friday of the month. So if a resident has a specific request related to a vendor or visitor registration, you'll see that icon. If you happen to mistakenly select a lot, you can always hit deselect and remove it from the list. So that's the process of selecting a lot. You still have, similar to visitor, the open gate option and a comment field. So I'm now going to hit next. It shows me the final Arrow Exterminating, Eric Ramos, lot 6, 16, 17, check-in, and I'm done. And like with the visitor I did earlier, I just got a notification, Eric Ramos from Arrow Exterminating has been checked into your lot. So the notification again happens instantaneously. The last thing I want to show you is a slight variation on vendor check-in. I'll go to, let me do one that has no employees. I'm going to go to AAD Master Gardener. And when I get to employees, there's staff, and there's also the option for new. So if you're checking in a vendor and it's a new employee, you can select staff, that's not an issue. But if you know the employee and want to enter them, you click on new. You can enter their name, Phil Rogers. You need to enter their phone number, 406-765-3445. And then once you leave that field, the next is enabled. I've already written an issue. We're only going to require the name. So by the time you get this, hopefully the phone will not be required. Although I hope that in many cases we put in a phone number, both for the guards as well as in the future as residents use the vendor catalog, which I'll go through in a subsequent video, they would have the information for contacting particular employees directly in the vendor catalog. So I'm going to hit next now. I need to select the lot. Now here's the second feature. There is no lot with a registration for this vendor. So in this case, we would need to call the vendor, we would need to call the resident. But let's suppose we've done that. You can then show all, and you can go in and then select a lot without a registration, and then go next. And then you can register AAD Master Gardener, the new employee for lot 16, and go check in. Okay. So now if I go back to AAD Master Gardener the very next time, or any time, the next day, the next week, the next month, we'll see Phil Rogers in there as an employee. So that's sort of handy. So that's the base case, and I'll stop this video here, and the subsequent video will be the exception case where the registration has not been created ahead of time by the resident or the guard.